Government shutdown, one of many political issues that we're watching right now. So joining us now with more insight, WGN political analyst Paul Lisnek. Thank you, sir.
No such thing as a quiet week.
Yeah, exactly. Every week it seems more and more. Let's talk about Senator Menendez.
Sure.
This is his second time in, what, 10 years or so?
You would that's exactly right. You would think he maybe learned a lesson the last time because, by the way, he was not found not guilty last time. What happened was it was a hung jury. Prosecutors decided not to prosecute him again, and he took that as vindication to move forward, and then apparently got into all this other kind of stuff.
Proven guilty,
innocent until proven guilty. It's interesting to see the way this gets handled. You know, on the Republican side with the George Santos, for example, everybody, they kind of back him. It's a witch hunt. It's all of that. And the Democratic side, they tend not to do that. They tend to be like, you need to resign, you need to go, you need to step down. Same thing happens sort of with Al Franken in his day. So we'll see whether he does. He seems to be like he doesn't want to go anywhere right now, but I think maybe a compromise for him will be if he were to announce he won't run for re-election, because he is up next year.
The other issue that we just talked about was another federal shutdown looming, but this one is because of a fight among Republicans, the House Speaker and people like Matt Gaetz.
So I've talked to several members of Congress, all of whom really do believe there will be a shutdown. So I'll just say that, because I would have said, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out a way to get there.
Usually they do.
And usually they do. But the problem here is it's truly those few Freedom Caucus members who are holding everything up, the Gaetzes, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and stuff. There's some reporting, too, that McCarthy is going to agree to remove some of the Ukrainian funding because Marjorie Taylor Greene is upset about that. This just isn't going to fly. It's not going to fly in front of the democratically controlled Senate. And certainly even in the House, one of the things that the Freedom Caucus wants, they want some cuts which would affect Social Security, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, those kind of things. Well, Democrats aren't going for it. So there's no path that is clear right now. And then, by the way, McCarthy didn't say, you will stay here and we'll work on this until we finish up.
Send him home for the weekend.
He sent him home early.
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and how he's weighing in today on social media regarding the shutdown.
Yeah.
He says this, part of what he posted, this is also the last chance to defund these political prosecutions against me and other patriots. They failed on the debt limit, but they must not fail now. Use the power of the purse and defend the country. So he's looking at his own benefit, how he can get out of this.
Well, right. He is looking at it to his own benefit. Either Trump knows what he's doing or he's really ignorant on this point. My point is, if they close the government down, it does not stop the investigations against him. He does seem that that's what he wants to do, shut these investigations down involving me. That will not happen. The Jack Smith line item is a separate line item that would not be impacted. It's a perpetually funded number. It's not impacted by a shutdown. Congress would literally have to go to that line item and defund that line item, and that's not going to happen. I don't think President Trump is that naive. I think he knows that, or he's been advised of it, but nevertheless, he's taking the position telling them to shut it down.
I think he's just throwing it out there so the people, the public can hear it, and maybe the backlash.
It keeps him on the front burners. I mean, it certainly does that.
However, he's not going to be at the next GOP debate in California next Wednesday. Who will you be watching to pick up more ground?
So right now we saw 8 people last time. Right now it's looking like 6. It's still kind of an interesting field because you had Asa Hutchinson, who's trying to get the RNC to say, look, could you modify your rules a little bit? Which is to say they have to poll at a certain level on these national polls. And the thing is, Asa Hutchinson, Tim Scott, those guys are doing fairly well on state polls. So what they basically said is, look at the early states and look at how we're doing there. And the RNC says we're listening. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's to the RNC's benefit to have more people on that stage, because if they cut them out, it's dwindling down. But anyway, so right now you have about 6 of them who will make it. Look, we know that Ramaswamy has, sort of shined through, although I've had some questions about, that he can throw punches, but he doesn't take them very well.
He was very vocal last time.
And Nikki Haley got a lot of points. And Chris Christie, of course, is just wanting to throw punches against Trump. Those 3 will be there. So, I mean, I don't think Christie has a chance at emerging right now, but I think Nikki Haley, this once again could be her day. Remember, in all these elections, they all have their kind of moment in the light.
And
I have
it is a marathon.
This could be Nikki Haley. I don't think Ramaswamy is going to hold on. And Ron DeSantis, by the way, who will be there, he's clearly fading. And so if you're a DeSantis fan, I'm sorry, but it's pretty clear that he's fading down. He's been too extreme, even for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in D.C. this week, asking for money, also saying that, you hurt Ukraine, you hurt the whole country, the world, not just Ukraine. And he seems to be getting a lot of backing from Democrats, but not much from Republicans.
Well, he was doing okay with Republicans in the Senate. So it's those same House Republicans who, and in fact, as we know, he went to Kevin McCarthy, said, I'd like to appear before a joint session, and McCarthy said, literally, we don't have time. that makes no sense. So, and as I said before, McCarthy it's been reported he's giving some indication that he may pull some of the funding for Ukraine that Marjorie Taylor Greene is yelling about. So I think McCarthy, again, he's given so much of his power away. I'm not sure he knows how to handle it. But many senators, Congress members, Senate, and House both recognize Ukraine is not this far off land that doesn't impact everything. Russia takes Ukraine, Russia goes for Poland. China goes for it goes on, and that's why the U.S. can't let it happen. That's what the senators and
World
congressmen
War
are saying.
III, maybe. You never
Potentially.
know.
Yeah, with all of that going on, this seems like a crazy out there silly debate, but it's something that is an issue. The dress code on Capitol Hill, Senator Durbin came out and said, yeah, it is a matter of decorum. What is your take on that?
Look, this is all because Senator
Fetterman.
Fetterman has clearly psychological issues about it. I don't think he's not flouting the system. I think I will wear shorts or something like that. There's something really going on with him. So the bottom line is, you know, I personally would not change the rules of decorum, but I think find a way to make an accommodation for him. They already did by letting him vote from outside in the hallway and doing different things.
Slipped his foot in or something.
Yeah,
like
but
that,
I think, but to say, you know, you must play by the rules. I mean, look, he was elected by the people of Pennsylvania. They know this guy. They know how he is, and I do believe he's sincere in not being able to handle that dress for whatever that attire for whatever reason. So that to me would be the proper answer. Take it in the direction to assist him.
Who's on your show this week?
So this weekend I've got Congresswoman Delia Ramirez. We're going to talk about the migrant issue that is so critical. She's been very involved in trying to get us some money, and there is a new poll out from Emerson College. So Spencer Kimball's going to join me and talk about how Trump is doing, Trump against Biden, and what the key issues are. And that there are some surprises in that poll because some things you think are on top, they're not.
We have to tune in.
Tune in Sunday at 9 o'clock.
Paul, thank you.
I know you do.
I always do. Thank you, sir.